Hey everyone, welcome to ITD News, where we talk about this past week's events in gaming. Well, we're going to talk about some of the big hitters that came out last week. But before we do, I want to make sure you can like and subscribe to our channel. Make sure to hit the bell notification so you can stay up to date to new videos that we put out. But with that, let's talk about these different gaming news. So the first one we're going to start out with is the Days Gone 2 kind of story that they were talking about. Basically, the gist of it is that Bend Studios, which is part of Sony, made the original Days Gone, wanted to make a Days Gone 2. And even though Days Gone wasn't, it wasn't really critically acclaimed or anything at the start. It sold good, but it was probably I would say it was probably one of Sony's lower hitters. There was a lot of people really wanting that game, but when it came out, it didn't do so well with critics and stuff like that. But it still has a following, and people still seem to like it, regardless of its kind of lower ratings than most of the Sony exclusives. They had wanted to make a Days Gone 2, and basically Sony had pretty much said no to that idea and wanted them to work on... I believe, Patrick, they wanted him to work on a Last of Us 2, or Last of Us, I'm sorry, a Last of Us remake. Isn't that right?
Well, actually, I think what they did was they took the Sony assigned that group to develop the new Uncharted game.
That's right.
They took that group and set them to do something else.
Yeah, and make a new Uncharted title. And then, from there, it was basically... They had shown off what they were doing with Uncharted. They were also working on, I want to say they were working on Last of Us 2 or Last of Us remake. They wanted to do a Last of Us remake to really show Sony what they could deliver. And they had basically done all this work to develop a small section of that game, The Last of Us remake, and to show it off, and Sony basically wasn't impressed. It took too much time, too much money. They were wondering, why is it taking so much time, so much money? And you got to understand, Bend is kind of a smaller studio compared to like Naughty Dog. So Naughty Dog, they would probably give them the time of day with it, right? But this other studio, they just want them to do what they want them to do, it sounds like. So they put them on creating the Uncharted game. And then for the Last of Us remake, they actually brought in some people from Naughty Dog to take over that game with Bend to help do that. One of the problems with Bend Studios, though, especially two of the big guys there, John Garvin and the game director Jeff Ross, they essentially left Bend because they didn't want to become part of Naughty Dog, really. They wanted to be their own studio, and they felt like with Naughty Dog coming in that, they would basically get merged into Naughty Dog and become like a subsidiary of Naughty Dog, or just, or Naughty Dog itself, right? And not their own studio. So it's a really interesting thing. It's kind of strange that Sony wouldn't go with a Days Gone 2. I think there's enough people out there that enjoyed that game and would probably enjoy seeing a second one, and having and working on a new Uncharted. I could understand Uncharted, or like a remake of the original Uncharted, like that. I can understand, because the original Uncharted is pretty old now. It's the first PS3 game, right? So it's an old game. But the one thing that baffles me, and we'll kind of talk about this here in a second, is the Last of Us remake. That I don't understand why we would be remaking this. But what do you think about, Patrick? What do you think about the Days Gone 2? Just them putting the axe to that one.
I mean, I actually thoroughly enjoyed the first Days Gone. I remember when they announced it and showing the cool trailer with the guy running through the lumberyard and blowing up all the traps on all the zombies and stuff. And I was like, that looks kind of cool. But it kind of came out in the plethora of zombie games. One of the things that I think they mentioned when they were talking about making a Days Gone 2 is that they were wanting to incorporate co-op and multiplayer. And anybody who's played Days Gone, I don't understand how they would get that. I mean, because you were by yourself. I mean, I don't know how you do co-op in that style game because it have probably lost something because there was just the whole risk of all the zombies swallowing you up, because there's fast movers and stuff. So I really enjoyed it. And I really wish they would have made another one because I played it and I beat that one. I didn't platinum on it or anything like that. I didn't spend that much time with it, but it was really quite interesting and cool game and had some cool little mechanics and different things. And who doesn't want to play a biker, killing zombies and stuff, with
Right,
traps
Sons
and
of
stuff.
Anarchies with zombies.
Right, exactly. Sons of Anarchy with zombies. So, I actually really enjoyed it, and I'm a little disappointed that they didn't make it. And I actually didn't realize that Jeff Ross had left Bend. I didn't even realize that until you just mentioned that. That sucks. I mean,
Yeah.
they're a smaller studio, mind you. Yes, like you said, and I can understand that. A lot of directors and developers, they come to or create a studio because they want to have full creative control. And then when somebody says no, we're going to bring in this other studio, especially a juggernaut like Naughty Dog. I mean, we know Naughty Dog's a hard hitting developer, so I'm sure he just felt like he was getting pushed out anyway. But if they really did, axe it, I know, what's his name, David Jaff was in the interview, and he basically, Jaff and Ross kind of were like, never say never that it's not going to happen, but for right now, Sony said no. So I don't know. I don't know what to think about that. I mean, have they really restricted that much that they're going to go, well, we need to take your people and throw them over here and making the new Last of Us remake, and then a little more Uncharted. I mean, I guess it goes kind of with the climate of all games out there right now. Everybody's sticking to their well-developed and well-defined IPs rather than doing something new.
Right. Well, and then Sony recently said that they wanted to just stick with AAA games, AAA blockbusters, and not really do these kind of, double A or, indie. I mean, they'll have their indie titles, of course, from their indie developers, but for all their big studios, they just want AAA products, which, that's fine and all. But then, with that, do they stay with just what they have? Right? We get a Ghost of Tsushima 2 and a, Uncharted 6 and a, all their big ones that God of War, we know these new ones are coming out, but is that all they're going to keep with, is that rotation of those games? And then, they might trickle in some small indies and maybe some like Jack and Dexter's or something like that, but you're fundamentally going to get their big hitters. And, sticking with AAA, it's like, are you going to, as Sony as a developer, or as a publisher, are you going to allow for these other studios to branch off into other things that may or may not work out, right?
Right. So are they gonna, if they're gonna focus on that, which suck? I mean, granted, Sony puts out some blockbuster games under their publisher. I mean, they have one of my favorite games under their title. I mean, Horizon Zero Dawn is like in my top 3 games, out of all games, and so they do good stuff. But I think, overall it could hurt them. I mean, because if you start just taking these studios and you just start saying, okay, we're going to stop with, Siphon Filter or whatever. We're going to stop with these games that just don't sell to our standard. Because I thought Days Gone was a good game, but it didn't sell to Sony standards. They're going to lose those people to Microsoft or to Nintendo or to some other studio who's going to just, let them do what they want. And Microsoft is like treading water. Like, they're just like beelining it for everybody that Sony is not making happy. I mean, there's rumor mill going crazy about Sony games that are no longer going to be Sony exclusives, and people that work for Sony that's no longer working for them. There's the big news out there that everybody's freaking out about Kojima. What's going to happen with Kojima? Is he going to go work with Microsoft? So, everybody's freaking out, and this may be part of what Sony is doing to themselves with stuff like this. I mean, if you're not going to focus on the smaller games that people love, which Days Gone, I probably, in a few years or so might become a cult classic game, where it just has a cult following because it has a decent following now. I mean, there's all kinds of rambling on the internet. There's even a petition going around to make Days Gone 2 because of the news that came out. So
Right. I assume that Sony at some point will make a Days Gone, or will greenlight, for a Days Gone 2. And, and kind of, maybe they're going to just see how this goes, but if you don't let those other developers just create something new, we wouldn't get something like Horizon, right? I mean, Guerrilla Games, I think, is the ones that make Horizon. And before that, it was, what's that one shooter game that it's been around forever? Can't think of it. Man, what is that game? What is it? Anyway.
you're talking about, is it Killzone?
Yeah, that's it. Killzone. So, Killzone was never really, I mean, there was people that liked it, but it was never a big hitter for Sony. Even the last Killzone, which I played, and it's an okay game. I played most of the Killzones, but they're just okay, right? They're not like great first-person shooters that everyone just loves, like Destiny or Halo and stuff like that. They're just okay games, but they let, and then that company that made those okay games went on to make a fantastic game in Horizon. So, without letting them just kind of spread their wings, we would have never gotten that. If they had that mentality back then, we would have never gotten a Horizon at all.
Yeah, and I'm not a Killzone fan, so I wasn't buying into anything that studio produced, until Horizon came out, and I literally bought my PlayStation for Horizon. I bought it for that game.
Right. Yeah. I didn't buy mine for that, but I definitely got that game as soon as it came out because I'm like, that looks awesome, and it was. It was awesome.
Yep.
So.
Yep, it's one of those few games I even bought the DLC for and replayed the whole game to get the DLC because I love that game from start to finish. It almost makes me want to pick it up and play it again now that we've been talking about it.
It is a great game. It's a fantastic game. If no one's ever played it, which I'm sure most people have now, it's even on PC. So if you don't have a PlayStation, you can download it on there. Which is another thing that Sony's doing a lot too, is bringing their titles to PC. They've also talked about wanting to bring their titles to mobile, so that's interesting. Might get a Days Gone 2 mobile version.
You can count me out on that one.
It's an endless runner. You're just on the bike the whole time,
right? I don't know how these people can play games on the mobile like that. I mean, I tried Fortnite on there, tried these other PUBG. I'm like, this ain't for me. So
no, I don't either. I'm not big into mobile games in general, but
Well, cool. Well, you had mentioned something in there that actually came out as newsworthy in your opening intro for this. Is them talking about Sony. We're still on the Sony kick. It's funny that they have two of our stories for this week, and Sony is talking about remaking Last of Us 2. Or not Last of Us, excuse me, the original Last of Us.
Yeah, the original.
I have very mixed feelings about that. And I kind of wonder how other people are feeling. I'm kind of stay away from the Twitter feeds and stuff on that because a lot of times they can be extremely toxic. But for myself, I have very mixed feelings about them remaking that game. I mean, it is a little older because it didn't come out as a release title. It came out in the PS3 when it was PS3, PS4 timeframe, right?
Yeah, it was the death of the PS3, or the ending life of the PS3 and the beginning of the PS4. It came out just at the tail end of the PS3 era.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I ended up getting a copy of it because the PlayStation that I bought came with that as like the remake. It came with because they remastered it for PS4 a little later on. The PS4 that I got with Horizon came out with a remastered free copy of that. And I remember you and Shane talking about that game. And I'm like, you know what? It's going in my rotation. So after I beat Horizon, I led right into that. And oh my God, I loved that game. But I don't know if it's really old enough to be considered for a remake. Because they're talking about a remake, not a remaster. So I don't know what to think of that. What about you?
Yeah, I'm not so sure I'm interested in that, a remake of that. I mean, as far as like, like you said, a remake, I mean, are they going to change like mechanics and story and characters and things like that, or the environments and places we go? Or are they just doing like a whole new, engine upgrade and, level of detail and stuff like that? Because if they're doing something like that, you would consider that more of a remaster in that case. But they did do a remaster, like you said, for the PS4, and they also did one for the PS5 for that game. I guess on the PS5 there is like high resolution pack or something like that, or 60 frames per second or whatever, or 4K or something upgrade for that game on the PS5. So they've, they put in the remaster work. So I don't know. It just doesn't feel like, I guess it is an older game, but it doesn't feel like it's old enough that it requires a remake. Plus, I think the game alone is good enough even now, right? It's still a good game now, and it still plays well now. So why remake that? Let's if we're gonna remake something, let's remake something else. Or ultimately, let's make something new, right? I love Last of Us, but let's move on to something else.
Yeah, I loved the game too. Like, it engrossed me. It was great gameplay, and it came out in 2013. So I mean, it's hard to put like a time frame on these games. When is it okay to remake a game? But how do you remake a game that had such an impact as Last of Us? I mean, that game had such an impact. So how do you remake a game like Last of Us without trampling all over it? How do you remake that? It's really a difficult position to be put in. I think if you screw up the story during the remake, then it's less of a game than the original. But I don't think they can make it better. I don't know how they can make it better,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we'll see how it comes out, but yeah, for sure. I mean, they're just gonna, exactly what you said. They'll end up just trampling the game, and how do you take something that was so good as The Last of Us and retell it or remake it and still get that same feeling that it originally had? I just don't know.
Yep, that's a difficult thing. It's going to be hard to do, and I almost wish they would leave it alone and just repurpose. They would have repurposed those teams to developing something new, as you said, or even help speed up the development of their current titles, whatever they do. But I think there could have been a lot better use of that talent and resources, because I think the article said they've been working on it since 2019. So I mean, they got 2 years into development on this thing already.
Yeah, and Naughty Dog's doing the remake, so I mean, you got the team for it, but it's going to be interesting how it turns out.
Right? Are they going to try to reweave back in some of the changes they've made into Last of Us 2 into that game? And
right.
You're just like, are they going to kind of do the reversal of Sixth Sense, where now the ending, with Abby and all that? We're going to weave some of that into the first story so you can see Joel and them.
No, they better not do that crap. I don't want any of that.
I don't want any neither, but I don't know how they're going to remake this one. I mean, it's not like we're going from Final Fantasy VII, the original, to Final Fantasy VII Remake, because there is night and day between that. And I'm probably not a good person to ask on that, because I never played the original Final Fantasy VII to compare it to the remake. But the game is so old and different that I would never have played the original Final Fantasy. I came in and played the remake and absolutely loved it. So maybe that's their hope for the new one but there's not enough for a newer generation of people to have not known Last of Us, the original.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Final Fantasy VII, the time period between both games is so long that, there was a lot of people that didn't play it. But, I mean, who hasn't played The Last of Us? I doubt hardly any gamer out there hasn't played it, especially when it came free with the PlayStation 4 and how many of those sold, and that Last of Us bundle, I got that one too, right? And that was like all they were selling pretty much. You couldn't even buy the regular one. You bought the one that came with Last of Us on it. So, the odds of people not playing it, so people know the story, I mean, think about how many units that sold, Last of Us and then Last of Us 2, just because of Last of Us. And it's going to be interesting what they do with that story.
Yep. And I think a lot of the stuff with The Last of Us may be just, it's gaining a lot more popularity than it is. I mean, they're making a new TV show. HBO, I think it's HBO, right? I think that's making the new
probably
Last of Us show, so it's just gaining in popularity. So maybe they're just trying to capitalize on that with a remake and not another remaster, because they've already remastered it twice, or not remastered it, but they upscaled it for the next console. So,
and it could be that they're trying to, with the TV show, they could be trying to release the game out at the same time, kind of like, here's the game, and then you can watch the show when you're done or something. I don't know.
What was the sci-fi television show that came alongside of a game? You remember that thing?
Yeah. That game is still on Xbox. You can still play it. I don't think the show's on anymore, though.
The show is gone. The show was good. I liked the show. I did not like the game.
Yeah, I can't remember what the game was called. It wasn't a very good game, but the show was pretty good. I watched a little bit of it, a few episodes. Um, yeah, that game is still out there to play. The free to play MMO type game.
Yep, I had to look it up because I forgot. I forget the name of it every time, but it's Defiance.
That's it. Yeah,
Yeah,
Defiance.
it's like Arc Falls and all that stuff. I never we
Yeah,
tried the game, but I never got into it because it's an MMO style. It's an MMO game.
it's a shooter though, so it's a really
Yep.
weird hybrid of MMO and shooter because it's more like shooter than MMO. Kind of like I don't remember if you remember that game by High Octane or something like that. Man, what do they call it? High Point or something like that. Anyway, it was a first person shooter MMO. Really weird game. I think it's still played to this day, but anyway, it was something along
Hmm.
along that lines of that kind of weird, not like Planet Side, but like an open world MMO. But anyway,
Hmm.
yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with that. You know, I wonder if they're going to show something like that off here at E3. I know Sony's probably not going to be at E3. They weren't last year. I doubt they'll be there this year. So I'm wondering if they're going to show it off with whatever little presentation they do. I could see them showing off like something from the Last of Us remake, especially now that we're getting news that that is a thing and we know that is in development. So now that the cat's out of the bag, they might be like, "Oh, let's show it," or they were planning on showing it, and that's why the cat's out of the bag, you know, for that because they are going to plan on showing it around E3 when they do their presentation.
Right, and that's always news that Sony's not going to be at E3.
Yeah,
I think they're still missing this year. They've not said they're going to be, and I guess there's no registration for them. So that's going to be interesting. I don't know why they're doing this, but whatever
yeah,
it's behind their marketing scheme or ploy. I mean, whatever they're doing, it's working for them because this is like they're selling more consoles than they've sold ever by this time when release normally. So I don't know if it's the scarcity of demand that makes it that way, or if it's the help of the scalpers. Who knows?
right.
It'll all come out in the wash. So cool. So yep, two big Sony topics already starting out
Yeah,
this one, huh?
Sony had a lot of news, coming out this last week.
Right? Yeah, I mean, some good, some bad. I think what they were in the there was a lot of commotion around some PS3 game titles, right? I think there was some issues with those updating or something.
Yeah, so Sony confirmed that the PS3, the Vita, and the uh, PlayStation, I guess the PSP stores will be closing. So we have the PS3 and the PSP store that closes, I believe, in July 2nd. Yeah, it looks like July 2nd. And then that's the PSP store. And then the PS3 and the Vita stores close August 27th. So those stores are going to go down. But what a lot of people have found out so far is that for some reason, with some titles on PS3, they will not update. And without getting the patches, they're basically unplayable. So that's even with the disc-based version, from what I've read, regardless of download or disc. Some players have found ways around them online to get it to actually download, doing some weird things with your system. Uh, putting like some of them were like you had to clear out some things, clear out some cache for some stuff, or do some weird things like that. One of them was like you had to play the game, pop the disc out, pop it back in, or something. I don't know. There's weird stuff like that to get it to work, and then some games just won't download them at all. So, that's talking about a couple different things. Game preservation. That's one of the biggest things, right? I mean, a lot of Sony and Microsoft before back in the day. Especially with Sony was pretty good back on the PS2. PS2 we had you could play that backwards compatible with your PlayStation 1 games, and then the PS3 had that too, but only certain models. It was actually the lower end models, surprisingly, because I think it was only the 60 gig PlayStation 3 model, and that and then they had like higher tiered, had more gigs, more storage models that came out around that time. But that 60 gig model was the only one that was backwards compatible. So that model there is, nowadays is the high price, like hard to find model because that's what people want. And then I think it also played PS1 games, the discs, right? And then they made PS3 models that didn't, and then of course the PlayStation 4 wasn't backwards compatible, and the PlayStation 5 is not. Microsoft's done definitely a lot better job with that, with trying to preserve those older games. But with the PS3 and the PSP and the Vita stores closing, that sucks for those those things. Now you have people online saying, hey, these are all the games you need to buy before these stores close, and then you're going out there and purchasing those things. But the Sony did say, if you do have them purchased, you can still download them and you can still play them after the stores close, so that's good.
So that begs the question, why? I mean, why? If you can still download the games you bought, so it's not like they're shutting down the ability to retrieve these games anywhere.
Right.
So in my opinion, what's the point to making them no longer purchasable? I don't know what resources it's eating up or anything that it's doing. I don't understand this move myself, because if you're still allowing them to download them, which they've said you're going to be able to download them, what's the point of shutting down the point of purchasing them? Is it to create scarcity so that they drive people to make a bunch of purchases right now? I mean, because Nintendo seemed to have did the same thing with their list of games. They're like, hey, you can no longer purchase these games after, the end of March?
Yeah.
The day Mario died.
Right.
So, what is the point behind this? And I would agree with you. Game preservation is a big one, because if you have physical, you're okay because you still have physical copy. But nowadays, how often do we get a day one game that doesn't have a day one patch? It is extremely rare. So if they start shutting down these services, as you mentioned on the PS3, where you can no longer get a patch on a game, hopefully that's a bug and not a repercussion of something they've done by prepping to close down these other storefronts. But that begs a lot of questions with what's going to happen to this stuff that you can no longer get access to buy. It's going to, I mean, it's a weird situation, because we have that with the older generation. If you want to play an old game, you got to go find the cart. I mean, there's ROMs out there, but the ROMs aren't always legally sanctioned, and to get a hold of those legal sanctioned ROMs from like Nintendo and PlayStation back in the day is almost impossible. They don't really want to give up that stuff. So what does this say for the age of digital? I mean, yes, digital is overtaking physical copy purchases, which means at some point, as you said, preservation will be more of an issue as we get less and less physical copies being bought. Less and less physical copies are going to be in the the retro market in 10 or 20 years or whatever. So you're going to look for that physical copy of Last of Us, the original version, and then Horizon Zero Dawn, and you're just not going to be able to find them, because they're no longer in circulation, because the number in circulation is so minuscule. And then all you have is digital, and then the digital store shuts down. It seems like so it's PS3, PSP, and the PS Vita store, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are the three that are shutting down.
Yeah.
So PS3 came out. It's been. Has it been 10 years since the PS3 came out now? First came out?
Yeah, probably a lot longer. It came out in 2006.
Okay. So, I mean, that's 15 years. So in 15 years, they're going to say you can no longer buy a game. So in what, another 10 years for PlayStation 4, when the PS6 or the PS6000 or whatever they come out with comes,
6,000.
they're going to say you can no longer get these games that we released for PS4 only, because we're shutting down the PS4 store.
Right.
I don't understand it.
Well, there's another thing with that preservation too, that kind of goes along with it with the PS4. I don't know if you saw that thing about the CMOS battery on the PS4. That when it dies, you're not going to be able to play PS4 games on your PS4.
Right.
So,
I mean, that's understandable, but that's something that can be fixed. They're obviously not by an end user. It's going to go back to the old days of the Microsoft reflow issue, where they had to go reflow the GPU to make it work. You'll end up having to take your PlayStation and pay some entrepreneur out there will have a little PlayStation repair place in the back of his pawn shop, says $50, I'll fix your PlayStation CMOS battery. And all he does is whip out this little $2.99 battery, gets in there and solders it back in, and there you go. It saves all your stuff again, you know. So I
Well,
mean,
with that one, the main reason why is because the, your games are your game on the PS4. Your games are set to the internal clock, and if your CMOS battery dies, you cannot connect your PlayStation to the uh, PlayStation Store. So what they were saying is like, even if you were to put a new battery in, there's no way to synchronize it with the store to set that internal clock back. And they were saying, so the guy, one of the guys, I guess he does a lot of jailbreaking, modding, and stuff like that. He said the only way that you would be able to do it is, because people are like, well, can't you just put in a new CMOS battery? And he's like, yeah, but you can't resync the clock because you can't go in there and alter the clock because it's tied to your trophies and stuff like that. And so he said the only way you could do it is by jailbreaking your PS4, where you could be able to, since it's jailbroken, you can go in and set the clock, and therefore setting the clock and putting a new battery in would then get you back up and running.
hmm. so so yeah, that sounds like Sony needs to patch that or
Yeah.
something to fix it to where that
Right.
clock can be to where it just syncs with an NTP server in your area where it says, okay, this is a North American Central Time Zone machine, and and it's in the correct geographical area, so we're going to allow it to connect to this and just
Right.
update the battery,
Yeah, they
update
said
the
it was
time
like
sync.
tied to your trophies in a way, like so that way people
Right.
couldn't set the clock at a different time and say you've unlocked trophies and various things like maybe time
Mhm.
constraint trophies or stuff like that. Something along those lines. That's why they
Yeah.
did it. But yeah, if they patched it, which I don't know if they will or not, but if they patch it where it didn't rely on that connection for your trophies and stuff, then it would be an easy fix. Is just putting a new CMOS
We
in.
have to I was gonna say you have to ask what is Microsoft doing then? If it doesn't seem like this has been a big issue for Microsoft, they're probably using the Windows standard where every machine just syncs with an NTP server and says, "Okay, does your clock sync match this?" And okay, we're good to go. I
Right.
don't know. That's interesting, but yeah, I did read something about the CMOS battery issue with Sony a while back,
Yeah.
and I remember the YouTube video where the guy was just like, "Here's what could happen," and showing that he couldn't connect. So
Right.
um, yeah, I mean, and that's an issue, especially if you can't, if you buy a PlayStation 3 or a 4 and this happens, what does that mean for the retro market? If Sony doesn't fix this, why am I going to buy a 20-year-old PS4 because I can't play any games on it because CMOS battery died, you know? So,
Right, but like what you were saying, like you think about the store going, or the servers going offline. Once the servers goes on offline, if they have to require this network connection to operate, and the store goes offline, there's no connection for it to, there's nothing for it to connect to at that point. So now you just have a paperweight, and then so those are like, so that at that point, when that happens, which is it is a long time down the road, but there might come a day where that does happen, and all those PS4s, especially for retro, like you were talking about, all those PS4s become nothing at that point, right? Until someone finds a way to get around it in some sense, which I'm sure someone will, but maybe
yep.
not to connect online, but some way to break it down to where you could just pop in a disc and play it and it works.
Right, yeah. But as we just mentioned, if you have day one patch issues, yeah, all new games have day one patches, then
Right.
you've just basically bought the game that's in the box. Sometimes is a placeholder too. It doesn't have the full amount of content that you
That's
need.
true. That's true. And sometimes
So,
it's just what was it? I can't remember what game. It was a game that came out recently. It was like I can't remember the name of the game, but regardless, let's just use this as an example, like Borderlands 3. There was one game that it wasn't Borderlands 3, but it was a game kind of like that and big in size where only 1 gigabyte of the game was on the disc. So 1 gigabyte worth of the game files went onto your console and it downloaded the rest. So, yeah, I mean, so then at that point it's like, why buy a disc? And you're exactly right in that case where, how does that game preservation come in play? Because yeah, a lot of games nowadays, I mean, that's why the market's more likely going to go all digital, because most games nowadays don't even come with the full game on the disc. You only get like partial and it downloads the rest.
never something you had to worry about up until a few years ago. I mean,
Right.
if it, especially just think of a cart game, any game on a cart, there was no such thing as downloading an update from the internet. It had to be ready to go when the cartridge came out. So,
Bugs
that's how
included.
that game. Yeah, exactly. You just got it. You happen to get that that first run that had something wrong with it. But That wasn't very common, but nowadays it is very common to get a day one patch on anything, and all devices have to be connected to the internet. So it speaks a lot, and it's a very worrisome subject because I buy 95% of everything I buy is digital. I even started buying my, something I never thought I would do. I started buying my Switch games digital and my PlayStation games digital. I never used to do that, and now I've gotten into the habit to where it's convenient. And so I don't own a whole lot of physical copies of anything just because of that. Well, I got to download a big patch anyway when I download it, so let me just buy it and let it go download while I go do something else. So it speaks volumes. I mean, there's quite a few. There's going to be a precedence at some point when one of these stores shuts down and somebody's going to lose thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars worth of purchases. That'll set a precedence for the future.
Yeah, for sure. It'll be interesting to see how they, what they do about it, or if they do anything at all. So
Right. Yep. Exactly. So that's a little worrying, especially I don't think I've heard anything out of Sony about the whether it was a bug. I haven't kept too much. I'll be honest, I haven't kept close tabs on it because I don't own a lot on PlayStation that's digital, but I do have some. But I haven't heard as PlayStation you've made a comment about those PS3 games that are no longer updates are no longer downloadable.
I don't believe so. I haven't heard anything either. Um, just the news that they couldn't download those patches, but I haven't heard anything official from Sony or any type of response to that. So, and as far as I know, there hasn't been any response to the PS4 CMOS thing. Are they going to patch it? Sony could patch it. They could put a patch in, like you said, and fix that issue for further down the line. But you know, we'll see. I mean, they still got some time to bring out something, but you would think, like, if this information is coming out and a lot of people are talking about it, because especially last week, a lot of people were talking about this stuff. I've seen a lot of articles and things like that, videos and stuff like that, talking about all this, and there hasn't been any response, no official response that I've seen. So it's kind of like, ooh, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, a little scary, especially
Sure.
for those people who own PSPs and PlayStation
Yeah.
Vitas.
Oh, and also on that, I guess kind of a side note is there's still some developers making games for PS Vita, and they were still making them up to the point they didn't even know the stores were closing until the official announcement came out, saying they were closing, and they were already like halfway through development of some Vita games and stuff that these developers were making. So Sony never
Wow.
even told them, hey, we're shutting this down. And they spent all that development time on making a Vita game that's now the store is going to close. So it's like, why even put it out then? Luckily, I mean,
Well,
for one
that's
of them I read about, luckily they had been making it for other platforms as well. So they could just, in that case, they could just cut the Vita out. But, there was like a couple other ones that were just making, like, I think they were just making exclusive Vita games.
Wow, that's pretty horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, I can understand them saying, okay, PS3, nobody's developing for that, and I don't even know how long the PSP's been out or the Vita because I never owned either one of them. I never got into those consoles, so those handhelds and stuff. So, but yeah, it's very eye opening. I guess the future will tell what happens with stuff like this. I mean, it's Sony's store; they can do whatever they want with it, but I don't think anything really bad will happen until you can no longer download something you purchased, and then we'll have some type of, in the US anyway, we'll have some type of precedent set in a lawsuit or something that says, they either can or can't do this, or they have to give you some type of alternative, which will be interesting. I'm not looking forward to it because it's going to be it's going to be a nail biter for us people that buy all digital. Because I cannot imagine if Steam went under or Xbox went under and I lost access to all my digital library. I hate to think of how much money I have tied up in those.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Me too. And we'll just have to see. I mean, they do have to think about that future of, like, what, all companies, not just Sony, have to think about what they're going to do to preserve these. What if, there's got to be something in place, that preserves all these games where people could still download and play them, an archive or something, that they've got to, think about and kind of set up for the future. Um, so it'll be interesting to see what they do with that. Big contenders like Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, I don't see them going away anytime soon. If at all, they're multi-billion-dollar companies. So, but things happen. You never know. So it'll be interesting to see. Plus, the Vita came out in 2011, so it's kind of surprising seeing that store go away so fast. I mean, granted, the Vita didn't do well for Sony, but still, I mean, it's only what 10 years old. So
Yeah, that is wow. I didn't even realize the Vita was so new. I thought the PSP was newer than the Vita. That's how bad I
no,
didn't pay attention to
PSP
those
was
consoles.
first, and then the Vita came out.
Gotcha. All I remember from the PSP is the memes that used to go around with the PSP that would fire discs out of it. Pew!
Yeah, because it uses those little mini discs.
Yeah.
The PS
So,
Vita, I believe, uses SD chips, kind of like the Switch does, but smaller ones, I
gotcha.
believe.
Well, cool. That's interesting. You know, some our top stories for the week are three of them are surrounding PlayStation. You know, that's interesting.
Yep.
PlayStation's been in the limelight a little here. I'm sure they're probably ready to either slink back into the limelight, you know, hide a little bit because some of the stuff's negative. You know, they got quite a bit of negative stuff going on because of the Days Gone cancellation of Days Gone 2, they didn't actually cancel it. They never got approved for it. We should say,
Right.
you know, and then the whole PSP, PS Vita, PS3 store shutting down, and then some PS3 issues going on with not being able to download updates. So
Right. Well, at the end of at the end of this PlayStation 4 era, you know, a lot of Sony's big executives left Sony or retired. You know, I don't know
mhm.
if they retired or left, but yeah, some of the big names that would come out during the like E3 and stuff like that, they all left the company and moved on to other things or retired, and so now you have new management. Man, you know, what I've read online, and I don't know, you know, some people are not liking what new management's doing, you know, and so we like you said, you know, this last week we had a lot of mostly negative stories regarding Sony, so or at least people perceive them as negative, and they do seem pretty on the more negative side than the positive side. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. You know, one thing I always say is Microsoft and Sony, they just take turns. You know, every generation they just like, okay, I'm the bad guy this generation, you're the good guy. It always seems that way. It was like that with the PS3 and 360, even though the PS3 ended up selling more than 360 in the end. You know, everything was being made and everybody was praising 360, and then one and PS4 came out and forget one. I love PS4 now. It's the PS5 and the Xbox Series X, and while PS5 is selling like hotcakes, you know, I hear more positive news or see and read more positive news about the Series X than I do about the PlayStation. So it's like, all right, here we go. We're flip flopping back.
All right, it's Microsoft's console season this time, so now whenever they come out with the PS6 or whatever, it'll be Sony's turn. You know.
Yep. I think they do that. They do it in the background. They're like, okay, this is your generation. All right, thanks, man.
Yeah, it's like it's like wrestling all over. Right? It's
Right.
fake and staged behind the scenes. They're like, all right, this time I'm going to be the guy that everybody hates, and then you know, and you'll be the good savior guy, and then we'll flip flop it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Next
So
year,
they
no,
got to make
next
the
time
villain.
it'll be Microsoft ends their backwards compatibility. Sony starts backwards compatibility.
Right? Yeah. So yeah, it'll be just a giant soap opera. Well, interesting, huh? So, yep, lots of negativity about Sony. I guess I guess we have one thing that's not Sony in our end of the week newscast, and somehow Nintendo ended up putting an indie uh, an indie conference out there, and I
Showcase.
didn't even
Yeah.
know that was happening. Yeah, an indie showcase. I'm like, what happened there? How did I miss that they were putting out an indie showcase? You know,
Hey, I missed
I
it
didn't
too.
see I didn't see anything, and usually I'm like on social media and I'm out there, you know, following the game hashtags everywhere and all that stuff, and I didn't see anything until you had mentioned it to me. And you're like, hey, and I'm like, what? How did I miss this? And I went out and checked out some of the what was announced. It was a really short showcase from what I saw. It wasn't very long. Well, I guess if you compare it to Microsoft's indie showcase, which was excruciatingly long, this
Right.
one was just the right amount of time long. So I guess there was all kinds of cool stuff announced and showed off on that one. You know, if you had to check it out, you should check out that indie showcase for Nintendo. Um, Maybe you have to follow some Nintendo exclusive hashtag or something to be able to see what they're working on. Because this one completely went under the radar for me.
Yeah, for me too. I didn't know about it either until the next day because I looked online and people were like, "Oh, this was," or it was later that day I think, and it was like, "Oh, this was shown at the indie showcase today," and this and that. I'm like, "What showcase?" And then I saw it's a Nintendo one. I'm like, because I saw these like, you know, when you go to like Game Informer or any of those sites on there, you see like all when those showcases happen, there's just trailer after trailer, and it's like, where's all these trailers coming from? And that's what it came from. But yeah, there was some pretty cool. I didn't know they were going to have one either. Like you, I'm online reading gaming news and articles and things like that. I never saw one thing about a Nintendo indie showcase happening. It almost felt like to me like it came out of the blue, just came out of nowhere. But yeah, they had some pretty cool games from it. Let's see here. We'll go over some of the ones that that they kind of showed off there. They showed off some that I'm not real too familiar with. They did have Oxenfree 2, which I never played the original. I think you can still get it on the Xbox Game Pass. I think it's still on Game Pass. It may or may not be, but I think that game's on like everything. But they did show Oxenfree 2. I know you played Oxenfree, and it was a pretty good game, you said?
Yep, it's a pretty good little storytelling game. It's very narrative driven, and it makes you think it's all aliens and everything when you're going through it. It's just basically a mystery type that, and it was really good. I enjoyed it. And I played it all the way to, and I actually got it when it was during one of those Microsoft run for 10,000 gamer points, type situation they put out. And I got it. I was like, oh, this one's got some easy achievements because it's all just running through the game. And I was hooked on the game. I'm like, it's a good game. And, getting all those achievements wasn't that big of a deal playing through it. It was a really decent game.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure. I mean, they showed the second one off on the, on the Nintendo Indie Showcase, but I'm sure that game's probably going to come to everything, like the first one did. So, or if it doesn't, the first one or the, it'll come out for Nintendo first, and then it'll probably everything else later on. So they also showed off Ollie Ollie World. Ollie Ollie was a game that came out. I never played it back then, but I think you were on like a skateboard or rollerblades or something like that. Kind of a side scroller, weird game. A lot of people liked it though, so those people are making a new one of those. That's cool. Let's see here.
Saw more footage of the Ninja Turtle game,
Yep.
Shredder's Revenge. We heard about that one earlier in the year. I'm looking forward to that one. I hope we all get to play as 4-player co-op in that one and not like couch co-op. But
yeah, they gotta do online co-op. They can't do couch co-op, especially with that type of game. I mean, we need a 4-player co-op on it. None of this couch co-op stuff with those beat 'em ups. The only one we got that wasn't couch co-op was Streets of Rage 4, and that game was great, and it was fun to play online. So
yep, I agree. Fun game.
Of course, Fez, which is it's really weird to see that Fez is coming to Nintendo Switch. I think it came out that day, and Fez is an old game. Because the Fez, I think, originally came out on the Xbox 360. I want to say, it came out in 2012 originally. So it's really weird to see that game coming to the Switch, being as old as it is, but. Good on it. It's a pretty cool game. I think it was developed by one guy originally. It was one of those Xbox summer arcade titles that came out during that 360 era type stuff. So,
yep. I think, like I said, I think the showcase was like under 30 minutes. It was like 21 or 29 minutes or something.
Right.
I can't remember what it was when I looked at it on YouTube and found the recording. And it was just like trailer after trailer after trailer after trailer. So there wasn't a whole lot of talking like the Microsoft one. So there was a lot talked. There was a lot shown off, and I mean, a lot of it I've not heard a whole lot about. I don't follow a lot of Nintendo games. I mean, I am a big graphics person, and it's hard for me to get behind a big Nintendo title unless it's just something that I love from my childhood. I bought my Switch for Zelda Breath of the Wild. That's why I bought my Switch, and then I bought more games with it, but. They put out some pretty good titles. I mean, we all talked about Monster Hunter Rise because we just had to play that. We're all Monster Hunter fans, and so they put out a few good things. A few things come out that just surprises me, and some things I'm interested in. I mean, I watched a little bit of I like some JRPGs and fantasy games and Ender Lilies. Did you see that one, Nick? The Ender Lilies Quietus of the Nights trailer?
I did not. Mm-mm.
I think that one's scheduled but that one's going to come out on PlayStation as well. It's going to be June for Switch and then July for the PS4 and PS5. So I don't know if I would get this one on the Switch or not. And it's also going to be on Steam the same time it comes out on the
Mm,
Switch. So I might, I don't know. I don't play my Switch enough. Maybe I should get a little bit more of these multi-platform games on the Switch just so I can get some more use out of it.
right. Yeah, no, I'll have to check that one out. That sounds probably, yeah. I don't know if I'd get it for the Switch or not. I mean, it's kind of weird. Sometimes on those, I might get them for Steam instead, or maybe even the PlayStation. But it just depends on what I want to play it on, I guess. But yeah, they also had that Getsu Fumadin Undying Moon. So that one is actually made by Konami, which we haven't seen Konami in a while. This is their first non-Planko machine in in what since Metal Gear 5, I think, or whatever the last one they put out. Or I guess Rogue Corps, the Contra Rogue Ops or whatever, Rogue Corps that they put out, that really crappy Contra game was probably the last one they
Yeah.
put out. But so this one looks really cool. This is actually from my understanding is this game was originally on the Famicom back in the day. It never made the original game never made it to the U.S. And I don't know if this is a remake of that original game or just a sequel or just kind of a, you know, just a new, not a sequel or anything, just a new game in that series of games. But that one looked really cool, like highly like Japanese art style and stuff. It looks really awesome. It's a 2D side scroller. They didn't say if it was going to come to anything else. Being that it's Konami, I would say it's probably going to come to a lot of other things, but right now it's just announced for the Nintendo Switch. So that one I'm looking forward to, which that one looks pretty cool. Maybe back to old Konami, that's what I'm hoping for. None of this Rogue Corps crap.
Right. And then I think Last Stop was another one of those Anna Perina games.
Hmm.
They make some really good storytelling games, so I don't know what to think about that one. I do enjoy a good storytelling game. So it's supposed to come out this year too. The Last Stop.
Yeah, and I think that one wasn't that one on the Xbox Indie Showcase too. I want to say they
I
did show
think
it on
so.
there. Yeah.
I think so, yeah. And so we're getting a lot of cross information from both of them. So there's a lot of stuff in here that I was just like, wow, okay, this looks cool. That looks cool. I don't know how much of it I would play, but there's a lot in here. And then some Nintendo games feel like I don't know. I don't know what's up with Nintendo. They put a lot of stuff out that seems to come to Nintendo years after it's been out somewhere else, and you're just like, yeah, I already got this somewhere else, and so it's really hard for me to justify buying it on there. Um, like the what was it? Was it Aztec Forgotten Gods? Isn't that one out on? I remember seeing that one, thinking I was thinking that one came out on something else too before because I'd already seen it,
Hmm.
or maybe I'm just remembering an older video for that one or something.
I don't that one doesn't sound familiar. Aztec Forgotten Gods. I don't know. Hmm.
I'm probably thinking of I probably saw it on Steam or something as like a whole page or something before this one before it was announced on Nintendo is probably what I'm remembering
Oh,
seeing
okay. Yeah, even looking at
because I think that
this.
one is coming out.
Yeah, even looking at the screenshots, that doesn't look familiar to me. It wouldn't
I just
surprise
remember the
me.
mechanical dragon looking
Uh,
face, and I think I saw it on Steam or something. So a lot of these things I wouldn't necessarily play on my Switch unless it was a Switch exclusive, and that's probably the problem with Switch, in my opinion. It's a little bit a Nintendo Switch is it's a little bit underpowered for what I would play, or not as easily accessible, I should say.
right,
Um, so I probably if most of these games come out on another console, I'm probably going to get it there to be honest. But I will play exclusives on here.
right. Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, a lot of these games. That's one thing about Switch too is they do get these like a lot of games that did come out for other systems and especially like way down the line, and they also get just really one-off weird titles that I don't know. Like it almost kind of goes with that shovelware thing that like, the Wii U and the Wii had. They do get a lot of these like just weird graphic novels and like just offbeat off the beaten path type of games that you're like, why is that? I don't even understand what this is. So they're kind of open for anything to come to their platform, which is not necessarily always a great thing. But I did look at all the titles on there. Some of them look interesting. Um, one of them that really sticks out to me, besides the Genchi Fuma one, is they're making a House of the Dead remake. So it's the original House of the Dead being remade, and it looks really good.
Yeah, I saw that too. It does look really good.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's going to be a remake, right?
yeah, it's a remake, and supposedly I think they were saying that there's going to be um, House of the Dead 2 remake as well. They're making that same developer. But this time they were just showing off House of the Dead. They didn't show any other platforms that it's coming to. I think the question was raised to them, and they said they didn't have anything to say about other platforms at the moment. So that more likely means that it is going to come to other platforms. They probably just have like I don't know if necessarily an exclusivity deal, but maybe like a certain period of time where they can't talk about other platforms, since they're showcasing it on Nintendo. And that's kind of like they want to get that hype up for people to go to the Nintendo platform and buy it. And then they'll be like, oh, yeah, and by the way, it's coming to PlayStation and Xbox and PC or something.
Right. It's really hard to get people excited for that, and especially because I actually haven't tracked too much on how well the Switch is sold. I know they're talking about coming out with a 4K console. Um, here soon, and I don't know what that'll do for them. I don't know if they're. I hope they're trying to attract more AAA titles and stuff like that to their console, and so it helps them in the market, because I don't want to see anything happen in Nintendo. I have a nostalgia soft spot for them.
Right.
you know,
Well, the
hence
Switch
why.
still sells high.
Yeah, I mean, it still sells. I mean, they come out with something new. I mean, I think we were all gushing over Russ's controller that he bought. His Pokemon controller, and I'm like, I really wish I'd have got that one. But they still come out. They sell all kinds of unique stuff, and what I mean by that is it's in the affordability realm. That if you want a specialized Pokemon Switch, you can usually afford it. They're about $250, $300, so they're a little bit more affordable than going out and spending $500, $600 on a console. And you're like, hey, I want that Fallout console, but I'm not spending another $600 or $500 on a console, so I wouldn't do that. But I might spend an extra $200 or $300 on a Switch if it got me a cool little specialized Switch. When they came out with a Zelda, they've come out with all kinds of special
Yeah, they
ones.
have the
So
Animal Crossing one too, which I thought was
right,
cool looking.
right. So that leaves that in the affordability. But I'm not a handheld gamer. I dock mine all the time. So
Yeah, I usually play mine docked. I also have a Nintendo Switch Lite, so if I want to play handheld, I'll just play that one. Um, but yeah, I usually do play it docked, and it's going to be interesting to see this 4K supposedly higher end, Switch that they're going to be coming out with. I would assume that at E3 they're probably going to, if it is a real thing, and we're getting more and more news that it is a real thing. So I think at this E3 we'll probably hear something about it.
yep, I agree. And yeah, I would say anybody that's a Nintendo fan and is looking forward to a few games, check out the Indie Showcase. See if there was anything you were expecting to see that they showed off. I know there's a lot of disappointment out on a few games that people were talking about wanting to see, and it wasn't shown off. So, but I mean, it's a weird year with COVID,
Right.
So a lot of things are getting delayed and pushed off. So it's an odd year for video games. Let's just put it that way.
For sure.
So,
All
well,
right.
cool. I think that about wraps it up for this episode of ITD News.
Yeah, that
So,
is it for the news.
yep. Be sure to tune in next week when we review the news of the past week. So tune in weekly to see what's coming up next.